Well, we're back. Your favorite educator on YouTube. I feel like this is kind of like that Blues Clues thing where the guy came back, where Steve came back. He's like, "Oh, it's been so long. Like, you've grown up so much." I feel like it's been that long since I've done one of these educational series on YouTube. But I have to tell you, it's great to be back, and I'm happy to be here. Today, we are going to be talking all things Olympic weightlifting. So if you are brand new to the sport of Olympic weightlifting, this will serve as somewhat of an introduction to bring you up to speed on what the sport actually is. It's one of the oldest contested sports in the Olympics. It's a very popular sport around the world. Something that I feel like, maybe I'm a little biased here, but everyone should give it a shot. Everyone should snatch, clean, and jerk to a maximum at least a couple times in their life. So what is this video series going to do? We're going to introduce what weightlifting is. I'm going to tell you what makes for a great weightlifter, what you're born with, how to train that stuff, how to get started, how to find an Olympic weightlifting gym, how to find an Olympic weightlifting coach, probably, at giftedperformance.com. That's going to be the best place to find one. And then we're going to spin this series off into a monthly video where we look at some of the videos from the Gifted Barbell Club, our competitive weightlifting team. And we're going to go through those lift by lift and break them down so that can possibly help you improve your own Olympic weightlifting. So this is the series. It's all about getting started, mastering the movements, and progressing through a hopefully healthy, long career in weightlifting. So we start off by, what are the actual movements that make up the sport? Well, there's two of them. And one of them is kind of two movements, but they lump it all together. So the movements are going to be the snatch, where the bar starts on the ground and finishes overhead in one movement. And then there's the clean and jerk, where you clean the weight to your shoulder, you settle it, and then you jerk the bar overhead. So what better videos to watch than the videos of Lasha from the most recent World Championships, where he reset again for what seems like the 10 millionth time, both the snatch and the clean and jerk, as well as the total world record. Keep in mind, these are the two heaviest lifts ever recorded on a competitive platform from our boy Lasha. So we start off with the snatch here. The man just has a power belly unlike any other. The knee wraps that look like they're double, tripled over. And before you know it, 496 pounds is overhead. A beautiful lift there. Let's look at the clean and jerk as well. Not the same quality video here, but we can see Lasha getting set up. I'm just going to go ahead in this video. So this is actually 267 kilos, the heaviest ever recorded clean and jerk. The previous best that had been struck down by drug testing was 266 kilos. So this puts the nail in the coffin of Lasha Talahadze being the strongest man in Olympic weightlifting, of course, in history. This still doesn't put him over the Sinclair, the highest Sinclair of all time. I actually did an episode with Seb Ostrovich where he talked about Naeem Solomenoglu and his all-time best Sinclair. I do believe that Seb said that Lasha would need a 501 or a 502 kilo total to eclipse Naeem. So a little bit of work to be done. If you are just hanging out in the video and you are a lover of weightlifting, go ahead and comment below. Do you think that we are going to see Lasha hit that 501, that 502 that gives him the highest Sinclair of all time? And if so, how do you think that he'll arrive at that 500 kilo total? A lot of people are saying 230 snatch, 270 clean and jerk. Some say, 230 on the snatch, maybe 231, 232. A lot of theories on how he's going to arrive there. All right, so those are our two main movements there, the snatch and the clean and jerk. Now let's get into the physical characteristics of what actually makes up an elite weightlifter. If you did like they just committed a crime lineup, what's that even called? Like a suspect lineup, something like that, of Olympic weightlifters, you would see a lot of different body types: tall, short, muscular. We don't want to say fat. Okay, rotund, healthily plump. So what are the actual physical characteristics? So I broke them down into non-negotiables, meaning these individuals must have these, and negotiables. The non-negotiables are going to be, number one, above all, is mobility. You need to be able to get into the positions that are required of the sport, which would be, the positions required in a snatch and a clean, as well as a jerk. So your bottom position, your start position, your overhead position, all of that. And we'll talk about that a little bit in the mobility slide, which is to come. The second non-negotiable is that there needs to be a baseline of muscle mass. These individuals don't need to be IFBB Pro bodybuilder level of muscle mass. They need to have some there. They need to have the muscle required to produce the force to put a very heavy barbell overhead. The next two kind of go hand in hand, which would be your absolute strength and your high power output. So there needs to be a certain degree of absolute strength, your ability to squat and pull heavy loads up to 1 RM values, as well as high power output. So converting that strength, that force production, and adding a speed or a velocity element to it as well. As you could tell by Losh's lifts, the man is immensely strong, but he also moves with a lot of speed. So you need to have those two together. And this is often why powerlifters who can deadlift 600, 700 pounds and bench 400, 500 pounds, when they switch over to weightlifting, they don't have a lot of success on the front end because they have a lot of that absolute strength and that force output. They're just not quite neurally wired in a way that allows them to convert that force into high power. We'll talk about that at length in future videos. Now, the negotiables, what can we get away with here? Body composition. So how much body fat you have is somewhat negotiable for an Olympic weightlifter. We'll look at the body types of a super heavyweight versus someone who competes as like a, in the 70 kilo-ish range on the men's side or around 60 kilos on the women's side, which you'll see is very, very different body types in terms of how much body fat they actually hold. The others are things like anthropometrics, limb length, how long your arms are, your legs are, your femur length, how tall you are. Are you 6'2"? Are you 5'1"? Those are somewhat negotiable things that you can work around, but they're things that need to be considered as a coach when you are looking at someone's lifts. When we kind of get all the way in the future to looking at specific lifts from Gifted Barbell Club, we'll kind of consider that stuff there because we've got plenty of very tall lifters on the team and we've got some very short individuals as well. And we'll take a frame by frame analysis of how each of them moves and why it looks different. The last two on the negotiable side are going to be the history of injury. So are you dealing with a knee injury, a hip injury, a back injury, a shoulder injury that limits the way that you move? Some things that you can work around there, some not so much. Some you just may have to kind of consider that in the grand scope of your career. How far are you going to push the lifts if you've got a chronic shoulder injury? And then exposure to training. Some individuals, they're exposed to training very young. You look at like some of the Chinese training camps that they do, and they've got 8, 9-year-olds who are performing techniques or snatches with perfect technique. They're exposed very young. And then you head on over to America and you watch like an NFL lineman or a collegiate thrower, and they're doing hang cleans with 200 kilos with less than ideal technique because, they've only been doing that barbell movement for 6-8 months, but the weight that they're moving is astronomical. So your exposure to training will also dictate a lot in terms of your training program and your progression. So now let's take a little bit of a deeper look into each of the physical characteristics. So like I said, when it comes to mobility, you need to be able to hit or achieve very specific positions. On the far left, we have Lu Xiaojun hitting the bottom of a snatch position. Now, do you have to have the same mobility that he's exhibiting right here? I mean, his butthole is basically on the ground in this position right here. Do you need to hit that? No. Can you hit that? Probably not. Lu Xiaojun is someone who has some of the most beautiful snatch positions in the history of the sport. But you do need to be able to replicate something that looks relatively similar to that. Deep, deep, deep knee flexion, very low in that bottom position. The bar is positioned ideally overhead. You got that external rotation of the shoulders. That is going to be your bottom position in the snatch. some people will argue for a little bit of internal rotation. Some people say, catch the bar a little bit higher, the toe angle, all that stuff. People are going to manipulate that on an athlete by athlete basis, but these are roughly the positions that we want to see. Up next, we've got Harrison Morris catching what is that? 170, 190, 195, a 198 clean right there. So bottom position there looks relatively similar from the hip down. The big difference there is going to be that front rack or that front receiving position in the clean. The last picture is going to be Lydia Valentine overhead in the jerk position. Again, you'll get some people that say, put the bar further back. Internal, external rotation, bend the knee, angle the toes. They'll say a lot of different things about how to manipulate that position to optimize it, but that's roughly the position that you need to get into. When it comes to mobility restrictions, or what's a better word? Limitations, I should say, for Olympic weightlifters as they first get started in the sport, you'll hear people talk a lot about wrist pain. So, holding that bar overhead or holding that bar in the front rack position. Upper back is also a limitation. The lats, tightness in the lats, your ability to get that elbow up to that position. And then obviously the lower body, the knees and the hips as well. Now, when we look at muscle mass, I've drawn some very interesting comparisons here in terms of the athletes that I've chosen. These are all athletes who have been very successful. I think each of these athletes has either a world, a national, or an Olympic gold medal. So these are athletes who have achieved success at the highest level. What we're comparing here is some of the lower-ish, with Klokov, we can say lower-ish weight classes to your super heavyweights. So your super heavyweights here are Li Wenwen and Lasha Talahadze, arguably the best super heavyweight on the male and female side of the sport, both carrying, how do we want to navigate this? A high amount of body fat? Yes, they have both been eating in a caloric surplus for quite some time, and it shows. But to say that these individuals don't have a high degree of muscle mass is completely wrong. It's just what it's hiding underneath. Now, when we go over to your leaner, more svelte lifters in the lower weight classes, someone like a Tia Claire Toomey or a Dmitry Klokov, you can see that because these individuals are lower in body fat, you can see the astronomical amount of muscle mass that they both are holding. If Lasha and Li Wenwen did a bodybuilding prep, you know that they would be super jacked. So all of these lifters here have a high degree of muscle mass, but muscle mass in weightlifting is kind of a hit a baseline and then building significantly more than that becomes more time than it's worth kind of thing. The analogy that I use is like IQ. If you have an IQ of roughly 130, you are smarter than probably 95 to 98% of the population. And going from 130 to 140 or 130 to 150 probably doesn't matter that much in the context of day-to-day living. Same thing with Olympic weightlifting. You establish a baseline of muscle mass. If you go significantly above that, it's probably not going to offer you a ton of benefit. And the amount of time that it's going to take you and recovery resources that it's going to take you to build that extra bit of muscle mass is just going to be more than it's worth. And you would be better, your time would be better spent doing more snatch and more clean and jerk. Now, I stole this chart from Greg. Again, go watch the episode that we did with Greg Everett. We'll have all of the Olympic weightlifting podcast episodes that we've done linked in the description. Don't click those yet. Don't click them yet. Hang around, watch the video, feed the algorithm what it wants to be fed. But I did steal this chart from Greg Everett of Catalyst Athletics, catalystathletics.com. And it's a comparison of absolute strength values, specifically the back squat, front squat, deadlift, push press, things like that. And then their power correspondence or the traditional lift correspondence. So you can kind of see, we'll just take the top one here as an example. It's a comparison of the snatch, a full snatch versus a back squat. And Greg's general guideline, and what I agree with here, is that your snatch should be roughly 60 to 65% of your back squat. Meaning that if your snatch is significantly lower, let's say that let's actually put some numbers on this real quick. Say you can back squat 400 pounds. That means that your snatch should be somewhere around 250 240 to 250 pounds. 240, 260. Sorry, my math is a little off. It's early. Give me a break. So 240 to 260. So if you can back squat 400 and you can only snatch 135, that means that you don't have an absolute strength issue. You have a technique issue within the snatch. And if that's the ratio that you're observing, you should spend more time focusing on the snatch. If you can back squat 400 and you can snatch 80% of that, let's say that's 320, that's going to be a ratio that favors increasing your absolute strength, spending more time building up your back squat strength. So it's always important when you start, or even if you are an advanced lifter in Olympic weightlifting, to be mindful of these ratios and let the ratios kind of steer your direction of training. Do I need to be stronger in my squats? Do I need to be stronger in my pulls, my overhead position? Where are the ratios skewed? Not so much in my favor meaning maximizing snatch and clean and jerk outcomes, and then adjust the training accordingly. Some athletes need a lot of absolute strength work. Some need more time focusing on the technique in the lifts, or just doing the lifts in a powerful manner, converting that absolute strength over towards power. Whoa, this slide looks familiar. Yeah, I just copied this one over. So physical characteristics in terms of body composition. So now we're going to take a look at body fat percentage. And the story is roughly the same as it was with muscle mass. Individuals with high degrees of muscle mass and high degrees of body fat, and people who exist on both sides of that spectrum, have had the highest degree of success in the sport. So who's going to sit here and say, okay, if Lasha lost 20 pounds of body fat, he would be so much better at weightlifting. He would probably snatch 235, 236. That's an insane statement to make. Body composition, again, just like muscle mass, is like you need to keep it at a reasonable range, but that range is pretty wide in terms of having success in the sport of Olympic weightlifting. Some bigger factors here in terms of long-term success and long-term programming and planning are going to be things like anthropometrics and limb length. If you are an Olympic weightlifting coach, or you are someone who's first getting into Olympic weightlifting, your limb length, your anthropometrics, your height, how tall you are, how short you are, how long your femurs are, how long your arms are really going to dictate how exactly you go into getting everything set up for the sport itself. So what does your start position look like? What is your where's the bar at in the second pull? How are you transitioning overhead? What is your back angle when you receive a snatch? What is the ideal width and depth of your split position in the jerk? All of these are going to come down to setting you up in a way that allows you to complete the movements pain-free and successfully, and then making manipulations to maximize your performance. Again, this is really where you need to find yourself a coach that understands these things so they can set you up in the exact positions to get it right. Now, when we look at our final piece of physical characteristics here is going to be injury history and exposure to training. Injury history is a pretty simple one. There are going to be some injuries that basically remove you from improving, competing at a very high level in Olympic weightlifting. Shoulder, knee, back, hip, all these kind of things can limit your ability to perform the movements. And if you can't perform the movements correctly or consistently and progressively over time, your career is going to be short-lived and or not very fulfilling. So there may be some injuries out there that completely exclude you from the sport itself. That's pretty rare. Most injuries can be worked through / around by manipulating the position so that you can still complete the movements. Maybe it's just not in the quote unquote ideal way to do it. Now, exposure to training is a whole new, and again, like I said earlier, not really even a physical characteristic here. This is just a discussion to be had on when you start, how much exposure you have, and how that's going to manipulate your training. So I took kind of like two ends of the spectrum here. So we took, over on the left, we got a video of Saquon Barkley cleaning 405. I think he was like a sophomore in college at this point. So he was like 19 or 20. So 405 pounds being 180, 184, 183 kilos at a body weight of probably 90 kilos. So you put this lift on any American Open or USA weightlifting national stage, and it's an extremely impressive lift. Couple that with a decent snatch, and Saquon is, competing at Pan Am's, under 25 nationals, and possibly, training for the Olympics. Saquon made the correct financial move by going to the NFL. I think that probably influenced it. But the point to be made here is that Saquon Barkley probably got some coaching on the clean in high school, maybe, and then some coaching on it, again, maybe at the college level as well. This is just an individual who has all the raw talent in the world when it comes to performing these movements. So here he is, no knee sleeves, a little bit of chalk on his hands. He's got the Nike free runs on that are good for nothing when it comes to Olympic weightlifting. He's just going to rip this bitch off the ground. You can see technique is not great. He jumps his feet out super wide. They call it a power clean. I'm not sure it was a power clean. Who gives a shit? It's 405 pounds and he's 19 years old. So when people say, Olympic weightlifting in the U.S. is terrible, like they don't have the talent for it, we have the talent for it. We have all the talent in the world for it. They just make the correct financial move, which is they go and they play in the NFL or they play in the NBA instead, and they don't do any snatch and clean and jerk. Don't get it twisted. And then the opposite end of this spectrum is hyper-specialized training from a very, very young age. Here we have an 8-year-old Chinese boy snatching, and this dude looks like he's getting ready for the Olympics here. He's got his straps, Buddy, and look at Buddy in the back performing perfect clean and jerks. His friends there. Here we go, little snatch pull, ideal position. Look at that bar position, knees go out. Like, this is a better snatch than you'll see at most CrossFit and Olympic weightlifting gyms, and this is an 8-year-old. So this kid has probably done hundreds, if not thousands of reps on snatch, and he is 8 years old. This is not uncommon to see, in the Chinese training system. So here we have Saquon Barkley, someone who has had very little exposure to the training at all, just a very genetically gifted individual, versus hyper specialization starting young, and two very similar outcomes in that they are both very skilled at the lifts. The outcomes are quite good. So your exposure to training will dictate a lot about how you get started. Are you in need of a lot of technique work, like someone like Saquon would be, or are you someone that can jump right into the meat and potatoes of heavy Olympic weightlifting training, like, this is crazy to say, but like this 8-year-old Chinese boy right here? All right, the last little piece here to go over is going to be the pillars of weightlifting success. And again, this was adapted from Max Ada of Juggernaut Training Systems, another person that I've listened to probably every podcast that he's ever put out. Take a lot of my weightlifting programming and coaching from him. So the 3 pillars of weightlifting success are going to be your squat strength, your pull strength, and your time to fixation, or your efficiency in fixating the bar. Squat strength being how much weight can you back, front, and overhead squat. This is going to help you in standing up a clean or standing up a snatch. Again, there should be a squat strength surplus here, meaning that you should be able to overhead squat more than you can snatch. You should be able to front squat more than you can clean and jerk. Because of the dynamic elements of the sport, a strength surplus will increase your likelihood of success, as opposed to being able to overhead squat exactly what you can snatch and having a very small margin for error. Pull strength, how high can you pull a clean and a snatch? So maintaining position in that first, and then creating vertical barbell amplitude in that second pull. How high can you pull the bar? The higher you can pull the bar, the more time you give yourself to secure the bar or fixate the bar. Time to fixation being how quickly and effectively can you secure the bar in a front rack or an overhead position. So front rack for the clean, overhead for the jerk, and for the snatch. And when you break down someone's lifting, someone that you're coaching or yourself as an athlete, you can pretty much pin down which pillar you actually need work on. Are you catching cleans and then getting buried at the bottom, unable to stand them up? You probably have to work on your squat strength. Are you finding it increasingly hard as you elevate the amount of weight that you're doing to get yourself under the bar or pull yourself under the bar in that third pull? You probably need some more pull strength. Same is true if you're having trouble holding your positions, your upper back angle, all of that in the clean and the snatch. Or are you just extremely inefficient when it comes to fixating the bar? Are you constantly getting crashed on by your cleans and your snatches? If that's the case, then you need to work on the efficiency of your ability to secure that bar, whether it be front rack or overhead. Now, you're all jacked up. You want to get started on weightlifting. How in the hell do I get started? So probably the easiest way is going to be to save yourself all the hassle and sign up at a CrossFit or a weightlifting gym. But they're so expensive. Yes, they are. Get over it. They're all that way. How do you find that? Use the USA Weightlifting. I've included the link right here. I'll throw that down in the description of the video as well to help you find a club. So USA Weightlifting has a really cool feature on their website that allows you to search for weightlifting clubs, barbell clubs in your area, and then you can find what gym they actually train out of. That is going to be the best way to get started because you not only have all the equipment that you need, but there's probably also coaches, other athletes who have coaching experience at the gym to kind of help you as you get started. Take as much help as you can get. No egos in weightlifting. Now, let's say, I don't want to work out with other people. I'm scared of other people. Fine. If you must be difficult, then you should get a barbell, preferably a barbell where the collars spin. So don't be lifting on like a powerlifting bar. Save your wrists. That's how I learned, and my wrists still hurt me to this day. You're going to need some bumper plates. Don't do this with metal plates. You're going to need a squat rack or a squat stand, a platform with some rubber flooring or something to drop the weights on. Clips and collars, if you're a CrossFitter, you would say those are not necessary, as well as some other things. There's some other kind of possible pieces that you could use, like risers for deficit pulls. You could say you could have blocks to do snatches and cleans from the blocks on, as well as jerks. But the barbell, bumpers, squat rack, platform, clips, I guess, are really the big ones that you're going to need to get started. Last but not least, do not, I know it's going to seem tempting. There's all the YouTube resources in the world that you can learn from. We're in a much better environment today to learn from than we were 20, 30, 50 years ago. But still, find yourself a coach. You need one. A reminder, in case you want to be a dummy, you need one. So find a coach. It can be a local coach in your area if you prefer the one-to-one in-person coaching, or online. Online is a little bit slower, it's a little bit clunkier, but the job can get done just by exchanging videos. You know, I have taught complete motor morons how to Olympic weightlift from ground zero with nothing but video. So it can be done. It's just going to be a matter of what you as the athlete prefer. Now, that concludes video 1. In video 2, we are going to expand upon what actually goes into Olympic weightlifting training. So we're going to talk about what it takes to build a program, what we're looking for, where do we even start if you want to write a program for yourself. But that is going to conclude us for today. As always, like, comment, subscribe, that YouTube stuff that everybody be talking about. I'm going to see you on that next video. We're going to talk about a lot more fun stuff when it comes to actual program writing. But until then, and always, stay gifted. See ya.